Next on the Delaware Way, the new state treasurer of Delaware, Colleen Davis, is here to talk about the state's money and her problem with a suspended license. This is the Delaware Way. Welcome to the Delaware Way. I'm Larry Menti. The state has a new state treasurer. So what does that mean for the economy of Delaware going forward? To talk about that is Colleen Davis, the new state treasurer of Delaware. Congratulations, by the way,
Thank you.
on your victory. Let's start off with some really easy stuff, some basic stuff. For instance, what is the role of the state treasurer?
One of the primary roles is to utilize the tax dollars by investing them in the short term. So it's cash management. It's ensuring that we have enough cash that's liquid on hand to pay our bills, and then any sort of surplus that's not necessary in the moment, that we're investing it and investing it wisely. It's also important that we're helping to maintain our AAA bond rating. We're also a bond issuing office, and so that means that for local infrastructure and schools, we're helping to supply them with bonds and essentially loans so that they're able to build onto their schools and maintain their infrastructure.
There's a competition for bonds, for state bonds, right? You want people to buy Delaware bonds and not
right.
Vermont's bonds, and so it's
Yes.
You took a little shot at Vermont, so maybe people make sure that they don't buy the Vermont bond. It is important, especially now, I would think, to get your financial house in order as we go through a government shutdown, and we may have another government shutdown depending on what happens
Correct.
with negotiations.
Right.
So you took office and then there was a government shutdown. How did that affect the state?
Well, the challenge there was we have several federal programs that we participate in, and if you want to continue participating in those federal programs, you actually have to be able to support them during times when the funds run out federally. And for us, those funds were becoming very close to running out for things like school lunches, our WIC program, and our SNAP program, among a couple of others. Our HUD housing and things like that were very close as well. And so from the treasurer's standpoint, we got together with the Office of Management and Budget and Secretary Jackson, and essentially developed some policy to ensure that we would keep cash on hand in order to continue to fund some of those programs that are essential to so many people in Delaware and families.
And so that's okay now? That's all been taken care of now?
Well, it is, as long as we do not go through another shutdown. You know, we're coming up on that 3-week timeline of potential continued negotiations where there's a little bit of a threat that we may go through that again. And because we've sort of seen quite a bit of a drop in our coffers, if you will. We typically maintain a little bit of excess funding of those federal dollars. We've sort of spent the majority of those, and so we're really close to having to ensure that we've got cash on hand. And again, that just means that we're not able to invest that money, and we could be out several million dollars as a result. So our hope is that we can all come together and cross the divide and really work for people rather than agendas.
So if the government shuts down and you don't have this federal money coming in, what happens then? Do you already have a reserve, or do you have a plan, or do you have to borrow money?
We won't have to borrow money, no, but again, we'll lose money just because we won't be able to invest the money that we do have currently.
But those programs are going to be fine.
We'll fund them. We'll ensure that they are funded. Yes, they'll be fine.
There's a continuing problem in Delaware that I don't think many states have, in that every year we seem to have a budget crisis. Summer comes around and there's another budget crisis and things have to be cut. Not so much last year. Last year was actually pretty good, but in the years preceding that. I would think as state treasurer, that's disconcerting to you because you're not sure what the funds are going to be coming in for you and what's going to be available every year. Are there plans now that, by the way, you beat Ken Simpler, which was the last standing Republican in the administration.
Yes.
So it's all Democrats. So now the Democrats own this. If there's another budget crisis, it is the Democrats. Are you working together to try to solve that problem for the long run?
Yes. So right now we actually have a little over $92 million set aside. It was actually something that Moody's mentioned in their report to us as far as what makes us a very solid investment when you're someone who's looking to purchase bonds. It's because we've started to set aside that money on top of the rainy day fund. So we actually have several sort of fail-safes, if you will, to ensure that these things get funded. But it's something to continue to consider because some of the things, again, that happen on the federal level, they do impact us very greatly. And we don't always recognize how what's going on in Washington really does impact the dollars that we have available to us here.
That's not the only variable, though. Because some of the things you depend on are not always consistent. Some of the funding I know Governor Carney's talked about this a lot. We have funding sources that he believes aren't sustainable, like unclaimed funds and franchise fees. Do you need another source of income that's more sustainable?
I think that we have to start becoming pretty dynamic about how we do that. You know, I would say yes, and again, how we do that is important because I think one of the things that we've seen occur is relying on those two sources slightly more over time, and again, there's going to be a point where we sort of hit that critical max.
Right.
So it is important that we're thinking about it. And
taxes. An increase in taxes.
Well, so I don't know that would be necessarily the way we go. I think that it would have to be, as I said, fairly dynamic in the way that we think about it. So in other words, we don't want to be hitting the smallest, least paid individual the hardest. So
a wealth tax?
Well,
is something you'd consider?
It's one of those things I haven't gotten to at this stage, but it's something that we're starting to dynamically think about.
I know when there's debate over those type of things,
Sure.
You're kind of like you have an opinion on it, but you don't get a vote. You know what I mean?
Well,
you get a vote.
precisely.
You get to give consultation. But I will say, when I interviewed the governor right after he won, he said, "Look, we need to get other sources of income, and everything's on the table." And I said gas tax,
Right.
Property taxes. I mentioned every tax, and he said everything's on the table.
Right.
And nothing's really happened since then. I mean, is everything still on the table?
Well, I think we have had a number of discussions about gas tax and about whether that would be there's a significant amount of money that could be gained there and at the same time not impact people as greatly. Again, I think we have to be dynamic about it. I don't think that's the only answer.
But never a sales tax. That's
Well,
the holy grail, right? That's the one thing that people object of, because people love Delaware because there's no sales tax.
It definitely draws a lot of people here. I think that we have to think about what we're doing on the flip side. We don't want to become like New York, where their taxes are so high that it's hard just to go into the city and make purchases, even though you may want to. We want to continue to be that beacon of commerce and sort of really draw people in. We definitely see a lot of people. Tourism is one of our highest industries, and we don't necessarily want to hit them. But again, I think we have to think about it dynamically.
You're having conversations about it.
Yep.
When we come back, I know the census is coming up. It is something that the administration is looking at very carefully because that could mean an increase in federal funds. We'll continue the conversation and talk about that when we come back with Colleen Davis, State Treasurer of Delaware, when the Delaware Way continues.